All right, everyone. Welcome to the Investor Evolution podcast. I'm your host, Kimberly Hoyt. And this week on the podcast, we have a special guest, Adam Dupuis. He is out of Louisiana. And I'm excited to connect with him because that's what he is. He is the connector and capital raiser. So we're going to dive into his journey, his roles, and journey through real estate. So, Adam, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, super glad, Kimberly. We've been looking forward to this now for a couple weeks, so glad we finally got together.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Adam and I had a chance to connect on another Zoom we were on that was for podcasts and, setting up our podcast. And we both have this going, but it was good to learn some stuff, get some golden nuggets. And here we are. Now we get to be on each other's podcast. So, this is great. I love it. So, Adam, tell me about your real estate journey. How did you get into real estate and what has that looked like for you?
Yeah, so for me, I've been in business since I was 19. I'm 31 now. I've always more or less always been self-employed or owned an LLC. And so I got an offer to join a real estate investing gig last year about this time, and it didn't work out. But
Mhm.
I've still always been super interested in like buying businesses more like on the commercial side, which you and I have kind of bonded over. That's where a lot of the capital raising activity is. And so I had gotten the urge to join Sub 2 because of zero down content. So, the opportunity to be able to buy like the more creative alternative classes like RV parks and multifamilies and things of that nature. And so I joined Sub 2 back in January, and now we're in late August, so it's been nearly 9 months of just hard hitting and going into ground running and going all in on real estate and the evolution of that, right? From working on single family deals that were simple long term buying holds and to working on more complex single family deals like co-livings and short-term rentals to bigger apartment complexes. And now some of the stuff that we do is for RV parks and development.
That's awesome. So, what was your background? So, you said you've been in business. What kind of businesses were you involved with?
I was involved pretty heavily in either products or transportation. So I had a pretty big ops background. I've sold just about anything you can think of, from low ticket offers. Like I had a subscription box at one point during COVID. So we did an e-commerce offer, which was like $30 a month, all the way up to, I've had companies that like right now, the one that I own is our average ticket is anywhere between $200 and $1,000.
Mhm.
And so I've always been heavily involved in the ops side, like planning, doing things like routes and staffing and internal coaching, kind of those sorts of wheelhouses.
Okay, awesome. And do you feel like coming into real estate, a lot of those skills have transferred over? And if so, how has that looked for you?
Yeah, they definitely did. That was one of the things I enjoyed about Pace's community in the Avatar series is like I came in, I already knew. I was like, look, I'm an integrator. I know that. I'm actually nearly equal skilled in both sides. So I'm a little bit ambidextrous when it comes to that. But I was like, I could do some of the integrator work if I wanted to, but I didn't put my whole heart into it because I was more interested in the other side, in the capital.
Mhm.
And yes, I mean, I was able to bring in a lot of those skill sets, a lot of the lessons I've learned in things like leadership and management and how to actually like kind of time block and go throughout my day. And that made a really big difference. I think that kind of boosted me in my REI journey. And some people think I've been in REI for multiple years when it's been probably about, a little bit less than one.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so when you went through that Avatar series, why did Connector, Capital Raiser, like what about those avatars resonated with you?
So for me, the reason that those resonated the most is because I'm really good at networking. before Squad Up Summit, which had, mind you, had been less than 5 months, probably about 4.5 months, I had already had like 200 contacts from sub two. Now I'm up to over 300 contacts from sub two. And, I know a little bit about each person. Like I maintain those relationships as best as I can, right? I can't text every single one of them every single day, but I try to nurture the relationships. I keep up with the people that I like, the people that I enjoy, the people that I trust. And so that really was what got me interested in the connector space. And the capital raising space is more or less the same skill sets.
Mhm.
It's networking and it's sales. And it's just a different kind of sales. It's really just the same sales skill sets you had before with more zeros, and it's a little bit less tangible.
Gotcha. Gotcha. What I am hearing is you've been able to use those skills of the integrator and the organization and the systems and the processes and be able to apply that to your networking. So kind of the work and the woo, like like Jenner Kutcher says, where the work meets the woo. What systems do you use to keep your connections organized, but then also be able to keep those connections moving forward and kind of putting those touch points on people as you go?
Yeah, there's a few different things. I think one, engaging with the people that you know, like, and trust in your algorithm is really big because it keeps them top of mind. Just the same thing as in your text messages, right? Like if I'm texting Kimberly once a week, I never have to scroll that far down to find Kimberly to text her again and say, "Hey, dude, what's up? Just thinking about you. Just wanted to let you know, I got this deal. Maybe we can work on it together." Um, so I use like frequent touch points with the people that I think of off the top of my head. With meeting new people, I use Motion for my calendar. I was using Calendly. Um, Calendly had a couple of blind spots that I felt were kind of getting in the way, so I switched over to Motion because it merges all of my calendars together and it keeps
Oh,
track of all my tasks and my projects as well as my appointments. So I've got all my booking links and stuff are in there.
gotcha.
So that's what I utilize for new appointments, and I have all my settings set up exactly the way I want to. So I don't personally put buffer times in between my appointments because if I have a tendency to want to talk a little bit more sometimes on calls, and
Mhm.
so that kind of it gives me that regulation of like when we start a call, I'll say, "Hey, Kimberly, I've got a hard stop. We've got 30 minutes allotted. What can I do?" And it also helps us cut a little bit straight to the point and say, "Cool,
Mhm.
like this is how I think I can help." Um, we utilize Open Dispo, which is what I use to send out for my podcast reminders, and that's another way that a lot of people they get in my space is they come. I do my podcast is live on Zoom every single Sunday afternoon.
Mhm.
And the people that I remember and engage with the most are the ones that show up. They're the ones that, they also text back. And so sometimes the systems are hard systems and sometimes the systems are, also just feeding the plants that are asking you for the water.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I love that. Now, as you've come into this 9 months, what was your initial goal coming in? What were you thinking like, okay, this is what I'm going to want to do? And how has that shifted over time? Maybe you're steady Eddie and you're like just on track, but
Oh no, I am way too ADHD for anything to be steady. I I do a lot and I do a lot frequently and sometimes I even spread myself too thin and I have to like retract and go back and say this is the core of why you started, like get back to this. So I came into it wanting to buy businesses. I wanted to either integrate whether it was horizontally or vertically with industries that I'm already in. And so that was one of the things that I wanted to do to expand my own revenue. What I didn't realize was, again, right, we join and there's all these shiny objects. It's easy to go left, right, up, down, and even inside out sometimes.
yeah.
But, I wouldn't say like it's shifted completely. It's just made me open my eyes to more interesting things too, right? Like there's there's other new ways to integrate. So like what we do is we do firewood delivery, which is like we do all the cooking wood for the local restaurants. We do the heating for the homes here. We've done like props for movie sets because that's a really big industry in Louisiana.
That's cool.
We've done bonfires for events. Like those are all things that we do. And so it's opened my eyes to like there are other in- verticals that have real estate incorporated in them that would be really interesting. And like one of those is RV parks.
Mhm.
I could literally buy a good cash flowing asset with a higher NOI than a traditional multifamily, building. And it would make sense for where we are because of like natural disasters and things. Like it would be less upkeep, it'd be less repairs, less maintenance, less capex in general to keep it up and running. And I'm also buying more customers because who else buys firewood? People at RV parks. The RV parks
Uh-huh.
can buy the bags at a discounted rate from the company, and then they can resell them and make the difference in the margin.
Nice. Okay, as you were talking, I was like, "Oh, that's perfect. RV parks are for sure a business." Then
Hmm.
you get the added benefit of the real estate within it. So you have that side of things. What now are you working on that with partners?
Yeah, I really think it's all about who, not how.
Mhm.
I definitely enjoy building new partnerships and relationships and asking people like, how can we work together, right? Like if you're my friend, if you're Kimberly is somebody I talk to frequently, it's not about like if we're gonna work together, it's when are we gonna work together? What are we gonna work together on?
Mhm.
And so for me, like same thing like with the integrator team, I didn't want to do it alone. I brought in other partners, some that are skilled equally in the same areas as me and some that are skilled in areas I'm not. And same thing with the capital raising side, I had a capital raising team. I had brought in two other partners to help because they had different networks that reached to different corners that I didn't reach. And so it's the same thing with the RV parks. Like there's four or five main departments, right? You've got like you've got lead generation, you've got acquisition, both of which I don't really have any interest in. Like I'm not going
Mhm.
to cold call. I'll set up the systems to scrape the leads from the internet, but I'm not about the cold call, so I'm not going to do the lead generation.
Mhm.
And similarly, like I don't mind talking to brokers and sellers, but and again, I have a skill set in sales. I don't really feel like negotiating with them. That leaves there's two more on the backside of this, which is operations, which I'm gifted at, and
Mhm.
I could run the whole park myself if I had to, and capital raising, which I've
Mhm.
also figured out that I have somewhat of a gift for. So I have two partners. They're focusing on the lead generation and the acquisitions, and I'm just focusing on the capital raising. We're trying to get parks that are big enough that we can get property management in place already. So then that way, none of the three of us are too overburdened. But I told them, I was like, guys, honestly, I'm a single guy with a dog. Like, I don't have any kids. Like, if I have to go live at the park and manage it for a few months, like, it's not that big of a deal. I'll do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's cool. First of all, love who, not how. And that is such a growth mindset, first of all, because like you said, there's other people who have skills that could you do it? Yes. Do you want to? Not really. And if you don't need to, you can build that team around you and together, like together, you guys are going to move forward so much faster because you're focusing on your strengths and letting someone else take care of your weakness. And I think that's the power that you're creating in these businesses, which is incredible. And I really love to see that. For your RV parks, are you looking nationally? Are there certain areas that you're looking? Are you looking specifically in Louisiana? What does that look like for your business?
Since all three of us are in the same metro area, we're just on different sides of it. So if you're looking at New Orleans, I am to the west and I'm almost to the water, and they are more to the southeast. Both of them live close by each other. So we're looking pretty much within southeast Louisiana, maybe southwest Mississippi. So probably about an hour to 2 hour radius of New Orleans.
Mhm.
And, But again, like you said, with that kind of partnership, if I don't have to carry the football the whole 100 yards, if I don't have to carry it from one side of the field to the other, we can accrue a portfolio much quicker.
Mhm.
We can make that progress because I haven't read Who Not How yet. I know the concept. I just finished one of Dan Sullivan's other books, The Gap in the Game, and that was one of the things that I had to realize. Right, was like we're never going to hit the ideal, so we have to measure ourselves against the progress that we've made since we started, which is what I
Mhm.
try to do every day. So that's why, like I said, I just go out and I find partnerships with people, and I'm constantly networking, and I'm constantly in the groups that I'm in. Like the other day, I just had over the last week, I've had 2 calls with 2 different fund managers. Just how can I add value to them? One of them has a fund of funds that does self storage. He made an introduction to somebody that's in the RV park class for me. The other guy's a private equity fund manager, and guess what? He wants to lend on our acquisitions.
Nice.
So
Nice.
it's the same thing. Like he came to me and he said, "Hey, I need a TC and it's a 2 contract. Do you have either of those?" I was like, "Yeah, I got them." So I got him an assignable sub contract for his deal, and I gave him a good recommendation to a TC. Right? It's about adding value first, and then you can always receive later.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. So, I mean, you are living the who, not how. And so, and Dan, their books are great. And so, The Gap in the Gain, actually, the last interview I just did a little bit ago, we talked about this. So it's kind of fun, the alignment of things, but really being able to see how far you've come and really being intentional about looking back. So how are you monitoring your progress? How are you kind of taking stock of where you've come, how far you've come, and then being able to turn around and say, how can I use that to move me forward?
Yeah, one of the things I learned from a mentor in high school is like if you take a little bit of time and just sit still at the end of your day, whether you call it meditating, I believe they called it like a review of consciousness, sort of, and you walk yourself through your day from the moment you woke up to the moment that you're then laying there, you can kind of see like how you started, where you need to improve, what you need to do better. But in general, like it's just looking backwards a little bit and saying, okay, I started here. I didn't know anything about anything to do with real estate
Yeah.
at one point. And now, I can talk the talk and I can walk the walk with people that know far more than I do. And granted, I may still have some gaps. I may still have, like, I might not know how to fully explain a cap rate to everybody. Like, I might not be able to underwrite the biggest deals, but I understand them on a functional level, right? It's just like anything else. It's just like a language. You're trying to gauge yourself on fluency. You're not trying to gauge yourself on if you know every word in the Spanish dictionary. You're trying to gauge yourself on like how much through normal life can I get, and then you're smoothing out the bumps.
Yeah. Awesome. So for you, do you do that every day? Do you like sit down, take a minute to reflect on what the day has been, where improvements can be made, what went awesome? Do you take that time every day to do that?
Yeah, I take time every day. Sometimes I'll even take time in the middle of the day just to like sit down and relax and catch a breather, right? Because we all have the same things kind of compounding right now, which is that like we have infinite amounts of text messages, DMs, notifications, everything is hitting us all at the same time. I've turned all my social media notifications off. So I go in and check them kind of fairly frequently throughout the day, but I don't spend any time in there.
Mhm.
That's been a big game changer. And, sometimes just taking the time to remember where your feet are and be in that moment, and spend that time with the people around you. If you have a significant other, spend it with them. If you have a pet, spend it with them or spend it alone. Go sit outside in nature. I usually go outside at least several times a day. I take the dog for a walk once in the morning, once in the evening, and we usually go outside middle of the day and play.
Mhm.
So it's taking the time just to not just reflect, but also just to get a little bit of activity, a little bit of fresh air, and just remember that all the things that are coming at us are temporary.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's Such great advice, and I love that reflection time because it doesn't have to be a lot, right? But it's
No.
enough to shift your focus like, "Okay, yeah, like, maybe this morning was not as productive as I needed it to be. Great, I can kinda move forward." And then it helps set you up, right? You kinda looking back and then looking forward and, um, being able to move yourself in the direction that you're intentionally wanting to go versus just letting the day push you forward as it may.
Tim,
So I think that's good. So right now we're working on the RV parks and looking at acquiring those. That's hopefully coming down the pike shortly. So that's great.
Mhm.
And then when you think about other businesses, is that kind of your main focus? Are there other things that you're interested in getting into as far as again, because you've got such a good background with the operations and were you in sales as well?
Yeah, I did door-to-door sales, I did phone sales, kinda throughout my career, and then at one point, I did sales pretty much every day because I was in transportation, so I did, like, tours. We had bike taxis here in the French Quarter, and that was something I did for several years, so that was an interesting combination of the 2 of, like, you had to be logistically gifted because you had to be able to plan a primary, secondary, and tertiary route, while
Uh,
still being able to, like, kinda spin a yarn and entertain people and make them laugh and tell them a little bit about the history and where they're going and what they should try and what restaurants are good and which ones aren't.
mhm,
Um, so that kinda taught me a lot about both a lot of the things that I'm looking into would be, like I said, either horizontal or vertical integrations. The RV parks are kinda almost more of a tangential integration because it's like buying your own customers up at that point. But like one of the I would look into like probably like a local residential trimming service. We
mhm,
we have a lot of them. They do very well here. It doesn't take very much to have a company that grows $2 or $3 million a year in that industry, and it can be relatively low overhead if you know what you're doing.
mhm.
If you have the right equipment, the right people in place, which I have all the local contacts. I could start a tree crew tomorrow if I wanted to. I just don't want to start it from scratch. So I'm more looking into acquiring.
Okay. You do the wood cutting or the wood
Mhm.
firewood service. So how did you get into that? Like, where did that come from in this whole world of things?
With doing the bike taxis, I was starting to get to the point where my body was breaking down from doing it so much. And so I was looking for something else, but I wasn't really sure what. And I had an arborist friend at the time who he was like begging me. He's like, dude, you could do this. And more or less, he sold me the pipe dream, right? He was like, you could do this. It's going to be great. You can make this much money a day. And that was my thing was he basically told me I could make like $500 a day, which at the time I was probably pulling anywhere between 150 to 300 a day, like with the cabs. And I was like, that'd be great. Like I could work out of my truck. Like I wouldn't be hurting all the time. I wouldn't have like the sciatica and the hurt knees and
Yeah.
the ankles wearing down and like I wouldn't have all that. So I was like, huh, this would be cool. So I started looking into it. Of course, come to find out, everything is a big industry, even the things you don't think are big industries. Like
Yeah.
you can go on Alibaba and you can order like 100 tons of firewood. They ship it internationally. You can buy it by the shipping container if you
Yeah.
wanted to. So knowing that there's like upward potential was interesting. Knowing that there was a decent amount of a customer base here was and between those two things, I think the combination of them was enough to entice me. And I was like, okay, I think I can do this. I think I can do this different enough. I saw enough value add opportunity in an industry where people are not straight. They are not always honest. I was like,
Yeah.
maybe I can come in and do it totally differently and we can build a brand and recognition around it.
Okay. And so what did you do differently? What did you come into this as and kind of disrupt things probably?
Yeah, I mean, really, I came into it as, more or less a kid. It felt like, 5 years ago, with a truck and a trailer and a few $100. And we came in and we well, I say we, but I came in, I just started doing the things that I saw were lacking, right? Like I showed up on time. I answered the phone. I
Right.
responded quickly. We took
Mhm.
electronic payments. I got better quality product. We had better quality service. I asked them for Google reviews. People really liked the logo, so some people wanted shirts, so we sold some shirts or we gave some shirts away.
Mhm.
And ultimately, a lot of it just came down to integrity. Like, even if I didn't know how I was going to get it done, I still got it done. If it was raining outside, like, I was still out there. If it was the middle of the night sometimes, like, I was still out there. It didn't matter. If I told you it was going to get done by the end of today, it was getting done by the end of today, even if it was 3 o'clock in the morning.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Awesome. What other skills are you kind of pulling over from there that's like, "Oh, I never would have thought that this would translate to real estate, but it's completely relevant." What have you seen there?
There's so much that transfers. Like you said, I mean, sales and marketing transfers, having some level of fulfillment and understanding transfers, right? Like, for the big integrated proposal we're working on right now, they're like, well, what happened? Like, what about deadlines? And it's like, yeah, dude, I understand deadlines. I also understand, right, that there's a lot of acceptance points here. And by acceptance points, I mean, like, there's stuff that I have to hand to you, and then Kimberly has to approve it, and then she hands it back to me, and then I do the next step, and then I hand it back to Kimberly, and she approves, and she hands it back to me. So I think having understandings of how most businesses operate and like the 4 or 5 major departments that they operate within, which, like I said, is usually sales, marketing, operations, fulfillment, and then sometimes you can throw in something else in there like technology or whatever, but it's mainly those big four. If you can understand those
Mhm.
four and how it transfers, like, honestly, I think real estate is just an ultra simplified version of any other kind of product service business that's out there. It's a higher ticket, right? It's a lot more zeros, but a house is still a
Mhm.
product. Like,
Yeah.
if I build a house, I'm still building a product. Just the same with if I build a couch or a bed frame, I'm still building a product.
Mhm.
But because housing is in need and we're in such a housing scarcity, it's almost like ultra simplified. You just have to it's hard to explain. Like, when a lot of my friends came to me in REI and they're like, "Man, this is so complicated." I'm like, "But it's not. It's really not. I promise you, like, you're overthinking this. It's so much easier than you're making it out to be." Like, but yeah, the fundamental understanding of those four, I think if you can understand how the different departments like work together
Mhm.
and you can transfer any of those skills, any of them at all. If you've sold anything before, guess what? You can sell a house. You just got to practice. It's all reps. If you've
Mhm.
marketed before, you can market a house. It's all reps. If you fulfilled on anything, it's the same thing. Just understand your deadlines and your deliverables. It's all
Wow.
reps. And same thing with ops. Like, if you run a team, it doesn't matter if you ran that team in corporate America or in another entrepreneur's organization or if you're in RAI now. Like, a team is a team, and just understanding basic interpersonal skills and communication is huge.
Mhm. Mhm. No, that's good, and I mean, you kinda helped open my eyes a little bit because we do make it complicated, right? We feel like it's a whole new world and we have to learn all these different things, and I think it really is about taking your skill sets that you have. Obviously, networking and operations is your superpowers, which is fantastic, and what a great combo that is, and then just being able to pivot. And sometimes, some people may need help seeing that and being able to see how like that can translate or really harness that power and be able to move it forward. And obviously you have done an incredible job for yourself and your team of being able to harness their superpowers. You're bringing in all these different people with these different skill sets to work together, and it's incredible what you're doing. So I'm really excited about the things that you're working on and the things that you're doing.
I will say too, on the previous point, really quick, Kimberly, is that the main difference I've noticed is the terminology. Like,
Mm.
REI businesses, it's really just about knowing the terminology. Like, I didn't know how to calculate. I didn't know how to run comps when I started. I didn't know how to get ARVs. I didn't, like I said, I didn't know what a cap rate was. Like, but again, it's learning the terminology and it's accepting that and it's moving through it and it's just asking a lot of questions. Like
Mhm.
I didn't understand why a flip I was trying to help get funded wouldn't get funded until they broke it down for me and they were like, "Hey, you do realize it's too high of a percentage of the true ARV that brings their LTV up too high." And I was like, "No, how'd you calculate that?" And they're like, "Well, your rehab budget is this, right? And it seems really low because the rehab on the house is like fixtures, painting, and lights." And you're like, "Yeah, so it's not a lot." But those little things on a super big square footage house, a 5,000 square foot house, blows your rehab budget up. And then it makes what looks like a wide gap not so wide of a gap because
Right.
600,000 minus 420 sounds like a lot of money. Like you got a lot of margin for error, but on a percentage wise, it's not.
Yeah.
Not when you're talking about a 5,000 square foot house. So again, those are all things like I just had to learn by going through them and just asking questions and just being humble enough to say like, I don't know, but like, hey, can you explain this to me?
We've talked a little bit about mindset and how you've kind of integrated in into your world with that. So it was a professor or someone that had kind of talked to you about the like recapping your day. What other resources have you used? Books that you've read, things that have helped kind of move you forward in that mindset side of things.
So many. Yeah, that was a priest went because I went to Catholic high school. And he was the
Okay.
one that taught me to basically review our day. They taught us that like on one of the retreats that we went on in our senior year of high school. Honestly, like I said, I started out back in 2018 when I had my own pedicab shop after working for somebody for a long time. I was in a business coaching group. I was in the Lions Den with Sean Whalen, and I was there for a few years. I went to several of those live events, got to meet and shake hands with people that right? Like that's the biggest thing is you might not have heard of who Sean Whalen is, but you've heard of like who Dan Fleischman is. And guess what? Dan Fleischman is there at Sean's events. Mark Evans DM is at Sean's events. I got to shake hands with these people. I got to start listening to their podcast. I started following them on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or whatever you're on. I like Instagram best because you can reach out to people and they will oftentimes respond. Like Mark Evans is a good example. I share his podcast every so often, and him and I actually message back and forth. The dude's worth 9 figures. He doesn't have to
Mhm.
message me, but he chooses to. But again, like when I started out in 2019, really late 2018, I was just some kid driving around in a truck listening to an MFCEO project by Andy Frisella, like in between stops. And I
Yeah.
usually would have my headphones in while I was working. Like I would obviously take them out to talk to people. I would go knock on the door, tell them, "Hey, I'm here. Like I'll come give you a knock when I'm done. I'll make sure everything is done and cleaned up before I leave." And all the loose ends are tied, which is another differentiator between us, right? Like we'd make sure their gate was closed, that their dog didn't get out, that there was no mess.
Mhm.
And I would tell them, "Hey, I'm going to come knock while you're done." Well, that whole time that I'm moving all this heavy material, like I'm still listening to these things. I'm still listening to audiobooks. Anything by Simon Sinek is really good. Anything by
Mhm.
Dan Sullivan is really good. Anything by Andy Frisella or Mark Evans DM are really good. I just finished the five dysfunctions of a team, which is a huge one.
Nice.
Um, right now I'm on Buy Then Build, which is a really, really good one if you want to understand the comparisons between like real estate and private equity. So that's one I just
Nice.
started yesterday. I actually brought that one up to that private equity fund manager and he recognized it. He's like, "Yeah, it's a really good one." It's one of the most complete books that's written on how private equity works for people that want to acquire businesses.
Nice.
Um, the Compound Effect is a really good one. I just gave away my copy of Never Lose a Customer Again by Joey Coleman, which has been a Bible for loyalty and retention.
Gotcha.
Um, yeah, there's so many good resources. I try to stick to, like I said, I listen to my podcast. I still listen to Andy Frisella now.
No.
I get my current events and I get my business knowledge a lot from him. And one of the things about like not being in a rush, I
Mhm.
picked up from him the concept of aggressive patience, which is like applying urgency without applying the need. Because when you apply like that need, like I need to be there, it gives it this level of like codependency as opposed to I want to be there. Like I'm doing everything that I can to get there.
Yeah.
And that makes a really, really big distinction. So yeah, I really subscribe to a lot of the things that Andy talks about. I've done and completed 75 hard over the years. That will definitely teach you what you're made of.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, like I said, the resources are endless, guys, and I mean, you anybody in your audience can always reach out to me too, and I'll give them even more.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and we all what I love about you in this is you've come up in a totally different way than I have, right? Like you've come into this realm totally different and huge sales, marketing, business background. I came in from the medical side of things, so more of a service kind of background as far as that goes and know nothing about business. So listening to you, I'm like, just like this, you're incredible. I'm like, I need to listen to these books. I need to read these. I'd love to pick your brain even more just because I think the way you see it is really cool because you're able to kind of break it down into their parts. And now it's just a matter of, okay, here's this gym business. Where's the marketing? Where's the operations? And it's just a matter of kind of stepping back. I love your simplistic view because it's really helpful. So you don't get so overwhelmed with all the stuff that you can. And a lot of us come into this real estate world, like you're talking about, and feel like there's so many things to learn, and it feels so overwhelming and complicated. And I really love the way you're just so simplistic about it. I think that's just your nature, is you're just like, that's just you. Like taking something really complicated. I think that's a sign of genius. Like you take something really complicated and you can break it down into very simple, understandable, bite-sized pieces that others can be like, oh, yeah, and you do that very well. So thank you. Thank you very much for that. That's been phenomenal for me. I've learned a lot. So thank you, Adam. I really,
Well,
really
and then
appreciate it.
too, like I said in the beginning, right? Like in the next month or two, I'll be 32 years old. It'll make 13 years that I've been doing this, and I did start from nothing. Like
Mhm.
my family had a French bread bakery for 70 years. I was in the family, got passed down in like three generations, and they ended up filing for bankruptcy in 2004, and they sold off all the assets, which of course was very painful at the time. I was like 11 when they did that because that was how we grew up. Like they would take the baby carriers into the bakery. Like we'd sit in the office and we'd be there, the aunts, uncles, cousins, grandma, grandpa, dad, like they all worked at the bakery. And
Mm.
so my dad was actually the ops manager. No surprise, right? Like
Doesn't fall far from
he
the tree.
no, he kept the whole thing running. That was always my interest, was like I always wanted to be with him, either scheduling the routes or writing out the ticket books or sitting on the forklift or in the back of the truck unloading the truck or just making sure that everybody was on point to hitting their KPIs. Like we had sheets of like how many loaves of each type had to be baked every single day.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, it is second nature, but that's what happens when you put yourself in these rooms. Like one of my friends, John Paramore, who I met in the Lions Den. He followed me into Apex, which was the other group I joined after the Lions Den before joining Sub 2.
Mhm.
John Paramore has a podcast. I would engage with John. I've broken bread with him before. We've talked before. And um, he was the one that taught me about the 4 or 5 different departments and the fundamentals that you need, right? Because again, like we all start at the same place. Like I didn't know this several years ago, but when I had all that time, whether I was in my truck or I was doing the labor, like I would listen to people that were either way ahead of me or just a little bit ahead of me. And I would just listen to what they're saying and I'd be like, huh, that makes a lot of sense. Like I should adopt that.
Mhm.
And eventually it becomes my second nature. So I'm able to teach it.
No, I love that. Yeah. Jesse, are you in the Growth Co. or Network to Net Worth? Are you in any of those groups?
I'm in most of them, and I get confused for being a part of the growth co because I'm like really close friends with most of those people.
Okay, gotcha.
We're,
Yeah.
we're doing a raise for them right now. We're finding equity partners for an STR that Carlin and James and Haley and all them are acquiring.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
yeah, we've had several of them on my podcast. Carlin has come
Yeah.
on. Jesse Stanton will be on tomorrow,
Oh, yes, I did see
actually.
that. So, and he talks about, teaching to learn, right? And taking the concepts that you're learning, turning around and teaching it to someone else as a way to solidify it in your brain. So, I think that's kind of helped you also as you've kind of learned it and acquired it and then turned around and helped others. So, I love it. Are there any special projects that you have or things that are kind of close to your heart that you are really wanting to give back to? Are there any, charities or those kind of things that you're involved in?
Yeah, so you'll probably appreciate this one. Every year here in New Orleans, they have a really big barbecue festival that they call Hogs for the Cause, and that's what it is. It's based around pork. They do a whole hog barbecue competition. All of the money goes to the local children's hospital.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it started some, I believe, in like 2009. There's a kid, and he had, I think it was, he had brain cancer, and so they started it to raise money for pediatric brain research. And now what they do is they build houses which are similar to like the Ronald McDonald House, right? So it's like a free or cheap place for low income parents that have to come long ways because we do have
Mhm.
one of the best, if not the best, children's hospital for miles, probably for at least 100, 150 miles, if not more than that. So people come from Mississippi and they come from different parts of Louisiana to come here. And so every year we do something. We do sell wood to the teams for hogs. So but I would like to get it to the point to where we just supply them, like we're a main
Mhm.
sponsor, which is a six-figure commitment to be able to be like on the banner alone.
Yeah.
But it would also probably be equally another six-figure commitment to be able to supply all 96 teams that compete on an annual basis. So that is what I'm working towards.
Perfect.
My heart is really in the children's hospital as well as anything to do with usually food scarcity
Perfect.
or disaster relief. So when the hurricanes come through, a lot of people will cook on their barbecue pits because that's all they have, right? There's no power. There's not oftentimes not running water. And I usually will come back in town and find a place to stay where I have those things so that way I'm not uncomfortable. But we will donate the
Mhm.
things that they need to whether it's manpower or saws to cut trees and clear roads, or we'll donate the wood to the people that are cooking for other people that don't have any food.
And I love that vision of being able to get to that point in your business where being able to give back to that is, um, you know, such a great place to be. So that's exciting.
It
I think that's
it
a great
is,
goal.
and it forces me to set really big goals, right? Like to be able
Mhm.
to have like say about a 200 grand tax write
Mhm.
off
Yeah.
is, you have to be doing a lot of revenue to be able to afford that
Oh, yeah.
and stay in business.
Yeah. So it's coming. It's coming one day. I like it. All right. Well, we'll kind of wrap up. Is there anything else that for a new investor? So really my podcast is kind of geared towards those newer investors, things that like either you wish you would have known coming into it, or that you would have found out sooner rather than 9 months down the road or whatever. Or is there any piece of advice that you can give someone new just starting out to help them on their journey?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for new investors is realizing that taking down a bigger asset takes the same amount of time, effort, and energy as it does to take down a smaller asset. Because, like I said, I've seen it all. I've seen everything from the small single family homes that people are looking to buy because this is regionally what they can afford if they have to go into the holding costs and so forth. But it's just knowing and understanding how to work with your own skill sets and with other people's money usually, to acquire these bigger assets because it takes the same amount of time and effort. And that's something that like my partners and I had to have a discussion because we were talking about scraping for RV parks. And one of my partners already owns an RV park. He's got like a small 8 or 10 pad. And so when I told him I wanted to scrape Google, he's like, yeah, but not all RV parks are on Google. I said, yeah, I know. And he's like, you're going to miss all the small ones. I said, yeah, I know. He's like, so you're not going to pick up any of the ones that are like my size or lower? And I said, yeah, I don't want any of the ones that are your size or lower. Like, we want to get something that's big enough that we could come in and we can get property management right away, because otherwise we're just buying ourselves another job, right?
Mhm.
Like, you're a medical professional. If you were to go acquire an RV park that only has 8 pads, you're probably going to just buy yourself another job. Like, who's going to cut the grass? You
Mhm.
don't have the money, you don't have the NOI to cover that.
Mhm.
Who's going to do the check-ins? It's probably going to be you.
Yeah, right, right.
Right? So I would say, like, look at the bigger assets, don't just go for the fourplexes or the eightplexes or the duplexes or the single family homes or the 8 pad RV parks. Look at things that make sense to you, that stretch your comfort zone a little bit, because I guarantee you can do it. You just got to put a little bit more
Mhm.
effort into the underwriting to make sure that it's all good.
Yeah, yeah. I think that was a big shift for me coming in, is exactly like you have to learn either one, right? So, especially if it's new to you, right? You're gonna be learning regardless. So if you can get those bigger impacts to start out with, then go for it, And maybe that's not your desire, but man, it'll move you forward faster for sure. And then I think the benefit, well, for me, because I'm a relationship person, the benefit of those is like then you need a bigger team. You need bigger, and more resources around you. And it's just gonna help you network and get yourself out there more. So awesome. Well, okay, so we have you have your podcast, you're on social. Like, what is the best way for people to get a hold of you and find you?
They can usually find me easiest on Facebook or Instagram. That's where I'm the most active. And if you find me on either of those, they will see the podcast reminders. All the
Mhm.
podcasts get posted to YouTube, but if you find me on Facebook or Instagram, you will then find the link. So you can come join us live on Sunday afternoons from 4 to 6 p.m. CST.
Perfect. All right. So tomorrow, well, when this airs, it'll be Monday. So every Sunday, 4 to 6 Central
4 to
Standard
6
Time.
CST. Yep.
All right. All right. So everyone go out and join, support Adam. Adam, thank you so much. This has been a phenomenal conversation. I've learned so much. I know everyone else has got lots of gold nuggets. Thank you so much for being here, and we will definitely have you back. So thank you.
Yeah, and like I said, if your audience needs any additional resources or they need some books or podcast recommendations, they can always just reach out to me and I'll give it to them too.
Okay, perfect. All right, guys, you heard it. Hit him up. All right. Until next time, have a great one.